Right now I've got 10 bottle babies.
Oh my
and
goodness.
I've got 6 squirrels and 4 raccoons I'm working with. And the birds that I have today, they have permanent injuries that make them non-releasable. And I average about 140 birds or mammals every year. And the goal is not to have a zoo, it's to grow them up, train them how to hunt and survive on their own, or if they're injured, to get them well and to get them back where they're supposed to be. So that's the goal. And my favorites are the birds. I like owls in particular. And I had to find a way to be able to work with these things. So wildlife rehab is it. If you ever need a wildlife rehabber, whatever state you're in, call local fish and game. They know exactly where all of us are. And your local veterinarians, they're going to know where we're at too. I'm the only rehabber in Jackson County. I pretty well cover Holmes, Washington, a lot of Bay County, Calhoun County, and I answer calls in Alabama and Florida. So you can see why I only have 4 hours sleep.
How do you get registered? How do you
I did an internship. You were required to have 1,000 hours working under a wildlife rehabber. When I applied for mine, I had 4,500 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And I did a 2.5-year internship. I have Florida rehabilitation permits. To work with birds, you have to have fish and wildlife rehabilitation permits, and then I've got an education permit to keep non-releasable birds to bring around places like this.
So what injuries do they have that make them non-releasable?
Okay, this is a male great horned owl who is named Greta. A little girl fell in love with him, so he gets mad being called Greta, I think, sometimes. I've had him, I believe, coming up on 8 years. He was hit by a car. You see the left wing is droopy. And when we did x-rays, the wing was broken in 2 places. One of the breaks was, the bone was just real powdery. And sometimes we get lucky, so we did surgery anyway and put a pin in, but it didn't heal well enough for him to be able to fly and to be released. So he became an educational bird, and everything you do, you have to have a permit for. Yeah. And so Greta gets to go around to state parks, Boy Scout camps, and to schools. And you can tell he's not in a happy mood.
If I was kept in a crate and pulled out in front of a bunch of random people, I wouldn't be happy either.
But he only has to do 12 programs in a whole year, and if you only had to work 12 days a year, that's not bad. And he hasn't done a program since about April. It's been baby season, yeah. And that's what I've been concentrated on. And when I walked into his pen with the gloves this morning, that ruined his day.
Yeah. He knew what was happening.
Yeah, and I can go in if I don't have gloves. Everything's fine. She's going to clean our water. She's going to give us fresh water. She's going to feed us. If I have gloves, we're going somewhere. And
what's that hissing sound? Is that like?
He's mad.
That's him telling her, why are we doing this?
You see that look I get? And they hiss and they clack their beak when they're upset. And he can exert 500 pounds of pressures with those talons.
So the gloves are necessary.
Yeah, and if you look at my arms closely, you'll see a lot of scars. I've got a lot of scars in my hairline. One of the wrinkles on my forehead is a scar, not a wrinkle. If you work with animals, you're going to get hurt. We have 5 different kinds of owls in Florida. The great horned owl is the largest, but there are a whole lot larger owls than this little male. A female will be 1/3 larger. He probably weighs about 3 pounds. I've had females that went up to 4.5 pounds. they're hollow boned and they have air sacs in their bodies, so they look a lot bulkier than what they actually are. And this summer I've raised 3 baby owls, and the end of September it will be time to release them.
So, sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Is there any like special grooming that's involved? Like I know that like with the certain dog species you have to like brush them, you have to like groom them. Do they require like grooming, or do they just kind of handle everything themselves?
They handle everything themselves. If I tried to groom him, I'd have some bandages on him. Yeah. Occasionally, well, he's been in captivity a long time. Occasionally, they'll have to have their beaks trimmed because they're not getting as much bone and all as they would naturally. And yeah, one of the things a lot of birds will do after they've eaten, they'll rub their beak on a piece of wood, and that's like their napkin. They're wiping their mouth off. I'm telling you secrets. Great horned owls mate for life. They will not build their own nest. They'll steal a hawk nest or a crow nest or even a squirrel nest and take it over. Usually, mating season will begin about December, and the male and the female will get together, and the female will lay anywhere from 2 to 5 eggs. She'll skip a day in between laying the eggs, and when it's time for the babies to hatch, they'll hatch on different days too. So you'll have little owls and big owls in the same nest. Whoever hatches first has the best chance for survival. They're going to get the best food. They're going to get the most food. They're going to be mama's favorite. I'm telling. I'm telling. And when the eggs are laid, they're the size of a chicken egg. They're white and round. Within 70 days of hatching, they've reached their adult size. It's unbelievable how fast they grow. You're all seeing that look. He's giving me.
Looks good kill.
He's begging.
For sure. A great horned owl can hear a mouse a football field away under leaves or snow, and they can zero in on that sound and fly in and make a kill and never see the mouse. And they'll have a high and a low ear. They're not symmetrical, and that flat facial disc will act like a satellite and zero in. But we can't release a blind owl because they can't hear that signpost that's standing in the middle of the field or that tree. Yeah.
They have to actually see.
Do you have to wear specific like scents like with caring for these animals?
No.
Do you have like a certain Because I wasn't sure if with working with animals you have to be careful of like the scents you wear.
Big places that work with a lot of different animals. I mean, to keep from imprinting things, I've seen people put on like an osprey suit and go in to feed the babies and look like this giant bird. But I don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
I mean, they just have to take me the way I am. I can't dress up like a giant alligator or bird or whatever.
That clapping.
The great horned owl gets its name from those ear tufts, and they can use these to express emotion if he's not happy. If he's calm and happy, usually those tufts will be down flat, and you'll see the barred owl, he'll have that kind of appearance to his head. He can use them for camouflage too. When a great horned owl is sitting up in a tree, they'll usually have their back up against the trunk and be as close to the tree as they can. And they can put those tufts up and it'll look like twigs, and it helps them to blend in. Little birds, other birds of prey, hate owls. If they find one out in the open, they'll mob it. A group of them will come together and they'll raise the racket, and you'll hear all kinds of squawking and screaming in the woods. And they'll fly down and kick it in the head and try and run it out of their territory. And the reason is the owls will come in at night and they'll find that nest of sparrows in the tree, and that's my dinner. So the little birds try and run them off and get them out of the territory. And raising baby owls and different kinds of baby birds, I can train them to hunt. I'll use mice, and I'll use small rats, I'll use minnows, even crickets, grasshoppers, things like that. I can train them to hunt. I can train them a whole lot, but I can't train them to hide. They have to learn that on their own. And like the 3 baby owls that I release, for a couple of weeks I'll be able to follow the noise and find them anywhere in the woods, because the little birds will follow them and mob them and dive bomb them until they figure out, hey, maybe I should be in a more secluded area, because those little birds are going to chase them and make a racket. But they'll learn too. 5 kinds of owls in Florida. Great horned owl's the biggest. The barred owl, which I have one of. Barn owls that have a white heart-shaped face. Burrowing owls down in South Florida, and eastern screech owls. And they like the pine tree forest. The pattern of their feathers is very similar to the pine tree bark to help them to hide. And in the daytime, they're going to be real, real still and quiet. The parents train the babies from the time they first start flying clear until the end of September, and then the babies are hunting pretty good on their own. Hormones kick in and they go out on their own to start their life in the wild. Usually they'll find an area within 6 miles of where they've hatched, and they have a 25-mile hunting radius. And that's why you might hear the hoo, 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 hoo near your house a week or so, and then not hear them for months after that. They're going into different areas to hunt, and eventually they'll come back around to you, but they're traveling through hunting. And I'll put Greta up, and I'll get out another one.
Just tell him Greta one more time.
Huh?
Just tell him Greta one more time. It pisses him off.
I think it does. He is grouchy today. Normally he's not quite that grouchy.
Oh, he was ready.
Yeah. And this is a barred owl, and I haven't had him very long, probably about 6 months. And barred owls are real common in the area. I get more barred owls than any other kind of bird.
It's like nope. 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 Nope.
Nope. This is very undignified. And this is Chip. Most of what happens to wildlife happens because we're sharing the environment with them. They get hit by cars, they fly into barbed wire, flooding occurs, and fish hooks and line is left in trees. They'll hit power poles. People will put out rat and mouse poison, and they end up eating the slow-moving rat or mouse, and they end up getting poisoned. But Chip managed to hurt himself. That left wing is broken at the shoulder, and at this point we can't fix that kind of break. A friend of mine's husband was sitting in their yard one night in their pickup truck, and the pickup truck had a camper on the back of it, and Chip flew in between the back of the truck and the camper in that little hole and wedged himself in. Now, we don't know what caused it. Was something flying after him to get him? We don't know, but for some reason he flew in there and got entangled and got stuck in there.
Why are his eyes different? The other owl had really like vibrant, like greenish yellow eyes. His eyes are just kind of like solid black or brown.
Yeah, just difference in the species.
Does it give them any like more sensitivity to like light, or does it affect their vision in any way?
Barred owls will hunt in the daytime as well as the night. And the great horned owl just primarily is a night hunter, so.
He seems calm.
And most of our local owls are yellow-eyed owls. The screech owl has yellow eyes, and the great horned owl.
He seems calmer. He's just kind of like, I guess.
What do you tell if he's a boy?
You'd have to do a blood test.
Okay.
Normally, you can tell from body size. A female will be a lot larger than a male, up to a third larger. But then Betsy Knight had a pair of bald eagles for 20-some years. Alaha weighed 9 pounds. We thought Alaha was a male. Gina weighed 14. We thought that she was female. About the last probably 8 years that Betsy had the pair of eagles, we thought Gina was laying eggs every year, and we would put branches into the pen. We would do things to help her build a nest. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife told us that if the eagles hatched, that the pair could keep them for 6 weeks, and then they would have to be placed with a wild eagle nest. And eagles can't count. You know, if you found babies of similar size and had a tree climber put them up there, they probably wouldn't know the difference, slip in a couple of baby eagles. Betsy got really sick and had to place the eagles with the E.O. Wilson Biophilia Center down in Freeport, and they blood tested them, and both of them were females, but with that big of a difference in the weight. So we can guess, but you really can't know for certain. You really can't unless you do the blood test. Barred owls are cavity nesters. They mate for life. They love the cypress swamps, and they're known to follow fishermen, and they'll fly down and steal bait fish. And they normally raise 2 babies too. And they're cousins to the spotted owl, which is on the endangered list. And we don't have them around here. They're out west and very rare. And I want to show you Chip's ears. They have a high ear and a low ear.
Oh, that's actually really cool.
You did.
Just kind of didn't know that.
Most of the time when a person finds wildlife and thinks it needs help, most of the time it really doesn't. People this time of year are really bad about finding fawns out in the woods, and a mama deer will come back to the baby about 3 times a day and feed it. And the fawns, up to a certain time, have no scent and can be hid in the grass and safe from predators.
So that's why Bambi's mom was never around. It was just kind of like...
Yeah, and people think that they've been abandoned. But you get to see when they haven't. And you know, you see something injured alongside the road, it definitely needs help.
Do they like being stroked or petted? Or
Yeah,
just...
they like to be scratched right above the beak, and he was purring earlier today.
What does that sound like, a cat, or does it sound...
Yeah, he did it. He's doing it now.
He is.
Do you want one?
They don't make great pets, do they? Because like you always see people who have
It's
like pet
It,
owners.
it would be against the law, and you know, no wild animal makes a good pet. They're supposed to be free out in the woods. And I've got these 3 birds, and they're permanent and can't be released. But they'd be much happier if they were in the woods and flying free and raising their young and training them to hunt and all.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be like putting us in a cage. We wouldn't be happy.
Oh, you does. Like, he looks like he's got.
Get over here.
He looks so sweet.
And barred owls are generally sweet birds. Now, great horned owl, you saw the clacking and the hissing and all that. Hurry. And owls are known as silent flyers. They have a special fringe along the edge of their feathers that muffles the sound as they fly. And y'all can pass that around. No other bird has that fringe to soften the sound. Okay. Yeah, he's biting me.
So what's the...
And this is a red-tailed hawk. And the red-tailed hawk was found by fishing game. And this is a male. He's small, or we think he's a male. He had his blood test.
Oh!
He probably weighs about probably 3 pounds. And he was found alongside of the road. And this wingtip was necrotic, and the tip hung by just a strip of skin. And there wasn't any way to repair the damage that had been done. Thank you. And when red-tailed hawks, when they turn 2 years old, they get the red tail feathers that give them their name. Before that, the tail feathers are light colored and barred about like the wing feathers. But he kept the barring, the juvenile barring on his red tail feathers. I've had him probably 2 years, maybe 3. He's at least 5 years old. In the wild, 10 years is a long lifetime for a bird of prey because of the barbed wire and the rat poison and the cars and the power lines. But in captivity, they can live up to 28 years. When they're sick, they're going to get medication. They're going to get food every day. Out in the wild, you're not going to catch food every day. But every now and then, there's an exception to the rule. 3 years ago, up in New England, a red-tailed hawk was found injured in the road that had been banned. And they ran the band number. And that hawk had come in the Reagan administration as a juvenile and had been raised and released and had made it 20-some years in the wild and then was hit by a car, but the injuries were minor and it was able to be rehabbed and released. And that's the goal, not to keep them, not to display them, but to get them well and put them back out in the wild. That's what we want to do. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh. Me too. And thank God no one was standing there.
Yeah, can you imagine
In Native American culture, we call that a blessing. Anything that happens like that, we turn it into something good. And I've done sweat lodges where the stones would pop and someone be hit by the stone, and the medicine man say, "You've been blessed by the stone people. That's a good thing." You turn it into something good.
At least he has it on camera.
Anybody got any questions?
How do you tell if he's a boy? Also blood test?
It'd be a blood test, but you know, we go from body weight, body size, but then
What was his injury?
he had been hit by a car and was found alongside the road.
Yeah.
And after, I guess the injury had happened several days before, and the wingtip was necrotic and hung by just a strip of like rawhide, and there wasn't anything we could fix. We just clipped the wing.
Do you have groups that you're members of? Now that we have this amount of technology, do you have like Facebook groups you're a part of, or people that also do this? That, even though I know you're the only one in Jackson County, but
there's a Florida Wildlife Rehabbers group, and then there's a nationwide Wildlife Rehabbers group. In 2008, there were less than 1,500 wildlife rehabbers that were federally licensed to work with birds. And a lot of people have dropped out of it because it's expensive and we're not funded. And, you know, whatever we do, formulas, food, all that, it comes out of our pockets. And everything, like the 3 owls that I have, I just spent $369 on frozen mice to get them through the end of their training up to the point of being able to be released. And, you know, that's hard.
Well, thank you for giving back.
Well, and they've given me a whole lot more than I've ever given them. I mean, the things that I've gotten to see that normal people don't get to see. One of the baby owls that I released several years ago, and he's the one that the birds dive bombed all the time. The last time that I ever saw him, I'm walking through the woods at dusk, doing my evening feeding. You feed hawks in the daytime, you feed owls at night. You feed them according to when they would eat. And I hear this racket coming through the woods, and he's supposed to be a silent flyer, but he's learning how to do everything, so it takes a while
so he's
to
a little
do it
noisy.
right. And I think it's one of the barred owls coming through, and this owl comes barreling through the woods and lands 30 feet over top of my head in a pine tree. And I've got meat. I hold up a chicken drumstick and I say, "Come on, Thunder, come on, I've got dinner for you." He looks at me, and a great horned owl across the meadow, hoo, 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 hoo. He looked at her, and he made his decision. He flew off with her.
With her and mated for life.
So she finished the training that I couldn't train. She finished training him to be an owl.
Yeah,
that's what I
so
believe.
Cool. Oh my
and
gosh.
I got to see that. 2 years ago, we had a great blue heron come in, and I was at a powwow up in Chattahoochee, and some of the people saw this heron that had all this fish line wrapped around its beak. And we tried to catch it, but I had recently broken my ankle and I couldn't run so good, and I still can't run so good. The next day, 2 ladies in their 20s were able to run the great blue heron down. Took him to the vet, worked with him for a week. He hadn't been able to eat and drink. Got some meat back on his bones. Met those 2 ladies up there at Chattahoochee and released him back where he had came from. And I sit him down in the water, and he looks at me, and he walks out about 6 feet, and he looks at me like, "Aren't you going to chase me?" And I said, "You're free, go." And these 2 girls are standing with me. And he jumps up and flies. He heads south. He flies about 150 feet, and he goes into the bank and lands. And this other great blue heron comes out of the woods just squawking and carrying on. And it's like a Walt Disney movie.
Like
we're all laughing
each
and
other.
smiling. And in my mind, she was saying, "Where have you been?
Yeah,
I've been worried to death. I've been looking for you every day. Where have you been?"
He's like, "I'm here, I'm here."
And we got
That's
to
so cool.
see it. We
That's
got
so
to
awesome.
see it. So, But it's neat. I mean, I'm blessed. I'm rewarded every single day. If y'all ever need a wildlife rehabber, call Fish and Game. They'll hook you up with one. And your local vets, they know where we're at. Mariana Animal Hospital, Dr. Kenneth Renegar, he works with birds, he works with bears, he works with alligators, all kinds of stuff. Thank y'all.
Thank you guys.